we're talking about reducing our tier one ticket counts by an astronomical amount in order to get users having their assets online, available, and in use all the time. It increases productivity for our workforce as well as decreasing cost for service desk tickets and downtime.
Alexandra Guenther, CIO at the formidable and fascinating Leidos. Welcome to Soul of the CIO. How are you today? You doing all right?
I am so good. Thank you so much, Tom, and the entire crew for inviting me to come on today.
We've come all the way to Washington to speak to you remotely, which is it's a long trip. It's a long trip for a Zoom call. No, we're really, really happy you were able to find the time while we're in town. As I say, such an interesting, really formidable organization. But for people who aren't in the sector and the industry, maybe give a short introduction to what Leidos is all about to begin with, please.
Absolutely. So Leidos is a Fortune 500 IT and cybersecurity solutions business. And so that means we provide both custom as well as integrated technologies for customers across the globe, primarily within the US and our defense base, but also for customers as well as other companies all across the world. We are about 50,000 employees strong, and we really take to heart the missions and the customers that we serve in critical infrastructure, in national defense, and in commercial areas.
For many reasons, at least a dozen of which I think we're going to get into a little bit here today, it sounds like about one of the most complex organizations to be a CIO for, almost imaginable, right? Tell us a bit about your overall aims and remit as CIO and what keeps you up at night fundamentally at Leidos.
So many incredible capabilities to come to bear to give to the employees across the world is part of my remit, but then also to make sure we're doing it in a responsible and collaborative and secure way in order to deliver on the capabilities we need to deliver for some very critical missions across the globe. So from my remit, we are a centralized corporation. And so that means that we have shared services at the enterprise level from a technology, cybersecurity, AI enablement. All of that is within the remit of the corporate center. And so I have quite a lot that both excites me and keeps me up at night across those areas. And number one is I'm trying to make sure that we are putting the most secure, capable pieces of technology and enablement at the hands of our 50,000 employees across the globe so that they can be supercharged employees for our end customers, because we are delivering across whether it's critical infrastructure, the electric grid, for our health sectors all across the world, for our national defense. We have to be able to provide whether it's software capabilities, cyber capabilities, or service capabilities from a service desk and a technology and a network. All of it's got to work when it really, really counts. And so that's what I try to make sure everything is up, available, and working so that our employees can solve hard problems for their customers.
We were talking prior to the interview about how Leidos currently really overhauling the whole service delivery approach to specifically better support employee productivity. Just to begin with, what wasn't working with the old model and what really triggered that impetus for change?
Yes. And I would say it wasn't so much that the old model wasn't working, but both internal and external factors then came on to play that made us say we need to respond. There was an opportunity for a call to action that I did not want Leidos to miss out on, is specifically with the capabilities as we shifted from, everything we do in cybersecurity, we talk about role-based access, right? And so when we talk about our IT service center and some of the AI capabilities that were coming on board and some of our technological modernizations that we are doing, we actually said, why not take this as an opportunity to not just have role-based access, but a role-based experience too? And how are our communities using these technologies for their purposes. And if we want them to be the most productive, supercharged employees all around the world, we have to understand how they're using the capabilities. And then it naturally led us into a space where we said, well, that means we need to understand their roles. And the roles tend to then form in communities of software developers or project managers or growth individuals. And so as we look at these communities, we then can make sure that they have access to a stack of technologies, of processes, of operating procedures that are most aligned for them getting those outcomes of productivity and capability.
That's a perfect segue, really, because as you can see, a sponsor of our show is NextThink, and we
Mm.
do end up talking quite a bit nowadays to CIOs about digital employee experience. And without asking you too directly about NextThink's technology per se, we would love to know how central DEX is at Leidos to what you've just described and what you want to achieve, and what the origins are of that specific element of the strategy.
So we've always had DEX as an element within our CIO component. When I came on a few years ago, one of the things that I sat down with is our DEX leader and said, how do we elevate this to make sure it is a hallmark of our service delivery overhaul, right? As we look at some of the AI capabilities coming on board and how we want to overhaul this, how do we make sure we're keeping this at the forefront of how we first understand how users are using our tools, telemetry into how that is changing as we roll out new things, and how we can both push things for a more seamless customer experience, and get faster feedback through some telemetry, such as NextThing, or some capabilities such as NextThing, and then also have continuous evaluation over time. And capabilities like NextThing allow us to have access to the telemetry in order to do that full life cycle analysis and learning as you go versus a point in time survey or other agents that are sitting on the computer that are only giving me access into a singular application. As CIOs, more information is better, but targeted, understandable insights is best. And so we really want to focus on partnering with capabilities and tool providers that give us real insights.
Are you thinking about DEX as a capability itself, as a set of metrics, or as a sort of a philosophy of behind your digital workplace, effectively?
Yes, is definitely an operating philosophy, right? I just talked about how it really is a central theme as you weave through an entire technological life cycle or evaluation. It can give you measurements. It can help you in your design of a technology rollout. It can give you insights as you go so you can tweak that design to be most effective and have it land most appropriately within the communities it serves. And then it also helps post delivery in order to give you the insights and the information, the feedback loops back from how users are using it. And so it's a whole part of our operating philosophy that allows us to meet users where they're at in a way that we didn't always before or that we lagged before, right? And so we would do surveys or we would try to make sure we stayed in point with community of interest groups. And while those things still have their place, Dex gives us real time access if we use it in a way that is an operating philosophy and not a point in time use case.
And when you think about sort of the history of service delivery, it's all been about tickets and SLAs.
Mhm.
What does it take to really flip that whole approach, that philosophy, into something that's essentially employee centric?
I think we want to flip the idea of that point in time SLA. How are we doing against a capability that we delivered to say, how are the users consuming it at the point in time they need it? And so we often call this a journey centric model where we're looking at how users are using it throughout their day, their week, their month, their year. And are they getting the value out of the capability and the technology that we thought they would? Are they using it in ways that are different and more value add or less value add than how we originally framed it out to be? And how can we look at the cross-functional pieces of how different communities are maybe using a capability throughout their journey cycle, right? And so journey could be, I am producing a physical thing, call it a widget for intents and purposes, but that could be any sort of a physical asset. It could be a digital piece, right? How am I delivering like I'm a customer service rep delivering customer service for an IT capability that we are putting out there. It could be something like I am a growth professional within my corporation, right? And so I'm chartered with delivering on proposals and meeting with customers. And what does that journey look like? What are the touch points with technology? And how am I interfacing with other groups in order to get my job done as productively and capably as possible?
Soul of the CIO is sponsored by Nextvink. Now, if you work in IT, you'll know too well how disruptions can derail productivity fast. Nextvink's AI-powered platform for digital employee experience keeps you ahead. It uncovers issues others can't see and resolves them automatically with employee-centric AI and always-on automation. Employees stay productive, IT stays proactive and even preventative, and leadership sees results. Nextvink, ahead of every IT disruption, behind every strategy. Learn more at nextvink.com. And what about your own journey as a CIO, essentially, and getting to understand the employees at that next level of kind of granularity? What have you learned about that contrast between what employees really value as against perhaps what IT has always traditionally assumed they value? And what do you use to measure what a good employee experience looks like objectively?
A good employee experience can be hard to measure for sure. And that's why understanding how our communities are using it is really, really important. We want to make sure that our employee experience has an expectation that can be met or exceeded, but also leaves room for opportunity for the users to use the capabilities in secure and capable ways that maybe we didn't necessarily intend. And so as we look at a journey or a persona base, it's really important to have these feedback loops where we do have communities of interest that are providing us with here's the most common use cases, but then that we have a feedback loop afterwards to couple with the digital telemetry that we're getting from DEX Technologies to say, what other use cases did you use? We've had really good experience, especially in a group as large as Leidos with 50,000 people across the world. You need to have enablement happening at the peer-to-peer level, and it can't just be top-down. And so we've been really successful with making sure that we have communities of interest that enable the peer-to-peer growth and use of capabilities, but they can also promote some of their best use cases. And so some of our telemetry that is used strictly for cybersecurity, we found out can also be used by our technology teams to understand how some R&D capabilities may be able to be used on a customer delivery side. We were looking at it from cybersecurity telemetry when an incident happens, but then we also realized that that same telemetry might be used on for a different use case. But you have to communicate that and open that up to say, hey, would this telemetry, what else would it be used for? And have those peer networks be able to volunteer up and say, actually, I could use that for this project over here. And so we've had some really good cross collaboration, cross functionally, and even across whole continents once we do have this more democratized set of service sharing capabilities.
In doing so, you're actually mirroring the origins of DEX itself. No, that started out as it's a tool, a cybersecurity tool, but then they realized the telemetry could be expanded so profitably into other areas of the business. So, what I was going to ask about was demonstrable success. So, particularly when it comes to some things you can talk about at the organizational level, you can communicate, you can draw people's attention to collectively. What stood out in your achievements so far?
I think as we talk about transforming the user experience and getting to the real heart of IT service delivery, and looking at bringing new capabilities in, one of the things that we're doing right now is transforming the internal employee experience for how we serve our employees when they have technological issues. And so we have seen a massive decrease in tickets by our ability to heal proactively when our assets, right, whether it's phones or computers or other items on the network, are degrading in service. And so being able to proactively address those, to push things to users, simple things like, oh, I have a pop-up on my computer that says I just got something overnight and do I want to restart now or on my lunch hour? I actually have a break at lunch, so I'll do it then. Let's schedule it then. It's just one less thing for the employee to have to do. It's one less phone call. It's less downtime. And so we're seeing proactively resolved. So that's the most simplistic one that we did several years ago. And that's been going great and continues to get traction year over year in terms of more resolved tickets, more telemetry, more self-healing. But then we start combining it with things like, well, how do I reach users where they're at with talk and voice and other modalities? So this idea of multimodality, service desk customization, and upgrades that we're combining with the self-healing capabilities with an advanced service desk. We're talking about reducing our tier one ticket counts by an astronomical amount in order to get users having their assets online, available, and in use all the time. It increases productivity for our workforce as well as decreasing cost for service desk tickets and downtime, et cetera. And so this idea of meeting users where they're at, multimodal communications for a service desk, leveraging AI as well as our predictive analytics and the telemetry we have in order to create a improved customer experience with decreased cost is something that I am really excited about, a very tangible, very specific IT service-centric example for you.
Let's get into AI in just a moment. Before we do, Leidos anything but a typical enterprise, right? You've got highly distributed, secure, classified environments, and complex regulatory requirements with that, right? Um, what is that sort of when you contrast the kind of environments you're having to work in with what can happen outside of those intensely regulated environments? What roadblocks are there, and what creative opportunities are there to get around those roadblocks in a way that helps everybody without compromising those very strict conditions of work?
Yes. So when we look at the opportunity and freedom that comes with a less regulated industry, you often have faster access to newer technologies or capabilities. You are not in as highly of a regulated or audited type market. And so you are able to experiment a little bit more freely. Now, with that comes risk, right? The whole purpose of a regulations and audit and control is all about mitigating more risk because the data we have is so sensitive and does have the ability to do both great things as well as potentially be used in harmful ways if taken maliciously. And so we take that responsibility very seriously. And that means that we need added technical controls, added administrative controls, and added technological, my CISO likes to call them speed bumps, right? Often where we have to make sure we've got just enough speed bumps on there to control the speed in order to control the risk and mitigate for risk, but not do it in a way that impacts our ability to keep up with our national outcomes that we do need to deliver on. And so I think there's opportunity for us to leverage the control pieces. It gives us a great framework to work in. And as a systems engineer, a framework for me is a good thing because a framework allows me to operate at speed, but within guardrails and with a sufficient level of control and risk applied. And so for me, working in regulated industries for nearly my entire career has meant that I have those guardrails in place and that they're well understood. The other opportunity it gives large enterprises is the framework and the guardrails that are consistently applied across organizations. And so you have this uh, very strong set of guardrails that are applied consistently, and consistency can also provide speed. And so once we have approval for release of certain technologies or an understanding of their cybersecurity controls, we're able to deploy technology consistently across an organization and democratize it very prolifically and sufficiently across the organization in a way that allows for the speed we're looking for.
And that's dependent upon your approach to incident response as well. And
Oh,
there's virtually no CIO who comes on the show who doesn't talk about sort of moving towards a more proactive or even self-healing environment. I'm sure it's obviously on your roadmap as well. It's part of your journey. But tell me, how do you manage that journey at such a vast scale specifically? How does that become a realistic aim when you've got 50,000 endpoints to think about?
yes. Well, and the minute someone has more than one asset, it's even more than 50,000 endpoints. So yes,
Fair, yes, yes,
I feel the pain
yes.
on a daily basis. And what lessens that pain is this idea of consistency. And so with a consistent approach and with options that allow and an understanding of what our employees are needing to use in order to deliver on their outcomes, those two fuse together for a top down, right? Regulations, controls are your top down. And the journey from the users and this idea of a role based experience is the bottoms up. And so as those meet in the middle, they meld to become your strategy. And so they illuminate the opportunities that your organization has in front of it in order to say, okay, in order for the employees to deliver on what they need to deliver on, and this is how they need to operate within their environments and for to meet their end user customer outcomes. And these are the guardrails that we have in play. Here's our list of options we have available to us. And do we want door 1, 2, or 3? And so we're able to look at it through a cyber lens applied, IT lens applied, regulation lens applied, but then also give opportunities for, well, this group doesn't have those same regulations, or this group is operating under GDPR controls, and so it's additive, or it's less restrictive in this other commercial environment. And so it illuminates opportunities as those two ends meet, as the top down and the bottoms up meet, is really where the creative problem solving that I talked about in the very beginning really starts to happen. And we got just start to ideate on what can we give our employees so that they can be even more effective than what they asked for.
Okay, well, with that, let's look at the AI transformation project
Mhm.
in a little bit more detail. Maybe give us that 30,000-foot overview of where it is now and where it's ultimately going enterprise
Yes.
wide.
So AI has long been a beloved topic in the CIO space. Even now on our weekly
Even
CIO
before it
calls and
existed, it was
in our CIO
yeah.
meetups, yes, we have been talking ML ops and artificial intelligence and robotic process automation for well over a decade now. And so we today get to normalize that conversation in our CIO groups as we talk about how do we do things faster and what are the new things externally coming onto the market that we can safely deploy, or what sorts of activities are we doing within our organizations. And so from an AI perspective, Leidos leaned in a long time ago. Like I said, we've been doing robotic process automation for over a decade. And so really looking at how do we innovate through automation, through ML ops, through real both generative and agentic capabilities that we can deploy, and what does that mean for our enterprise? And one of the most important things that I loved we were looking at when I came under the role even was, what's our data strategy? What's our enterprise data strategy? Because even at the time, as we were doing more with ML ops, we knew we needed to tap into an enterprise data strategy to capitalize on enterprise AI capabilities. And so this idea that's really hot in the market right now, and all of the icons on LinkedIn are talking about your data is your foundation, and there's this really tall tower on top. And in order to get to the AI penthouse and have it be a, a well loved and well used and long standing building, we have to get that foundation right. And so this idea of data as our foundation has been critical for our abilities to succeed at an enterprise level with AI, But we've got tons going in pockets as we look at generative AI embedded in different pieces. We also kicked off an initiative where AI is embedded within our tool suite, right? For each of our journeys, how is AI creating net new capabilities or changing our tool stack, for those particular communities in a meaningful way and in a way that maybe we need to adjust to?
That's amazing. And just thinking about the synergy between what we were talking about earlier with regards to DEX and this sort of very ambitious project around AI transformation, from what you're describing, for one sounds like a test case for the effectiveness and potential impact of the other, right? From that is AI as the perfect DEX is the perfect vehicle for this process of AI transformation. Tell
Mhm.
me about how close you see those two respective projects as really being.
Very close.
Mm.
So when we first started on our, no kidding, generative AI and agentic AI implementation about 24 months ago, I actually pulled in our DEX lead manager and said, I want to do this from a journey perspective. When we talked about how do we describe this to our executive leadership team and our CEO in a way that's compelling and convincing of why we need to have additional investments in certain AI areas, we chose to do it from a DEX perspective. And that was very intentional because for me, it is one of the most impactful ways to really have people understand the value and the impact that a well-delivered set of AI technologically enabled capabilities can provide an employee space. And it was very compelling as we pulled it together and we talked about how do I pull a a team together from different functions and provide them with AI capabilities. What are their pain points now and how is that solved through an enterprise data strategy that is AI enabled and outcomes focused?
We talk about the philosophy of DEX. We've spoken about the philosophy of DEX. What about the way that requires a kind of mindset shift within IT at the enterprise? Um, and how challenging has that been? How central is it to the success of your overall project? What communication strategies have you been able to implement that have helped make it effective on that kind of cultural level?
Remembering the people we serve is a core focus, especially for someone in the defense space. And so I really leaned into that messaging when I took over as the CIO. And I asked and I had a call to action for our entire CIO organization to lean into that as well. Who are the individuals you serve? And it's the 50,000 Leidosians all over the world. And how can you make their job 1% better, 10% better, completely revolutionize how they can show up to work? And that is one of the most just proud moments that you could ever have. And so we look at our organization and said, what IT capabilities are we providing? And I said, but who are we providing it to? And make sure that you understand your end user really well. Another piece to our CIO organization is that we have business relationship managers. When I reorganized the organization a couple of years ago when I came on board, one of the things that we looked at is making sure our DEX team and our business relationship managers were in the same organization so that they could work together. That one person who was understanding an entire sector and a set of communities of how they were using our capabilities and what their needs were and what their anticipated demand cycles were could directly feed into our DEX team and understand, okay, what would that look like and how do we want to communicate it, which also has organizational change management in it. And it's also the same organization where I put our IT project execution team so that you had this full look from early demand signal to how would that look for the user? What would that be communicated? And tying it into our project teams to say, what do we need to go execute and how do we get these demands funded and through the cycle fastest? And so this really tight tie out, even down to the way we constructed our organization, not just how we're communicating, but how we're fundamentally operating on a physical and a hierarchical basis was a key part to our strategy to enable that DEX at the central piece and to carry it all the way through.
Alexandra, I'm so glad we were able to do this. Before we let you go, because this has
Mhm.
been completely fascinating, just a word about the role of the CIO, particularly with all of this change and transformation in mind. Um, how has your perspective on IT leadership evolved in recent years, and what do you think the role of the CIO is becoming, especially in an organization such as Leidos?
The role of the CIO is changing, and I always like to believe it's for the better. So in the past, there have been times when IT operations was a back office function. And I truly believe that technology enablement is how companies can really have an advantage over their competition and provide an advantage to their end customers. And so learning how to use technology, not just to make sure that it's available, but that the right tech is accessible to unlock creativity and opportunities that weren't there before, is really a completely audacious and honorable charge to have. And I think that is the charge of every CIO, if you're willing to step into it, is to be able to look at all of your employee base and say, if you all could do even more, what could you do? And the the answer is anything, right? If we are able to empower our employee base to a very large extent with the technologies that they have, with the integration and collaboration they can have with other employees as well as industry partners, then there's nothing stopping us as a race and as a set of communities that can operate all across the world for collective good.
Alexandra, absolutely phenomenal. So glad we're able to do this. So much I'd love to talk to you about again, maybe in a year's time. So many updates it would be great to get. So please do come and see us again, won't you?
I would love to, and I will be there in person next time. I really appreciate the time.